December 27, 1941. Vaksø, Norway. British commandos moved through the shattered remains of a coastal warehouse, their boots pressing lightly against broken planks as they formed into a tight line around the collapsed doorway. Inside the ruin, a German patrol advanced unknowingly toward them, footsteps echoing across the hollowed structure. The commandos adjusted their Sten guns, each man already assigned a firing lane cut through blasted walls and fractured beams. A hand signal passed down the British line. No speech. No hesitation. Only precision. The leading German stepped over a fallen crate. The commandos opened fire in a single controlled burst, sweeping the corridor and dropping the patrol before they could react. British riflemen shifted instantly, covering the next approach, turning every corner of the broken building into a prepared killing zone. The ambush was not a chance encounter. It was a deliberate method, one the commandos had refined with discipline, planning, and ruthless clarity. Their tactics inside ruined structures were now shaping the rhythm of the raid, pulling the battle deeper into the maze of shattered walls where they held every advantage. Britain entered the Second World War facing a brutal reality. German forces had overrun large parts of Europe, and the British Army, still recovering from the retreat at Dunkirk, lacked the strength to strike back through conventional means. The nation needed a way to disrupt the enemy, unsettle their garrisons, and force Germany to divert resources far from major battlefronts. This urgency led Winston Churchill to issue a clear directive in June 1940. Britain would form small, aggressive raiding units capable of hitting occupied coasts with speed and precision. These would become the commandos, men trained to operate behind enemy lines, using ingenuity instead of raw numbers. Their mission was simple in intent but demanding in execution. Strike fast. Inflict damage. Withdraw before the enemy regained balance. Every raid had to send a message to German commanders that Britain was not only resisting but also capable of carrying the fight to their doorstep. As training intensified, instructors discovered that the commandos needed more than physical strength or marksmanship. They needed adaptability. Europe was filled with ruined structures, bombed ports, burned warehouses, collapsed farmhouses, abandoned coastal stations. These were not obstacles. They were opportunities. British planners saw potential in them. Ruins offered concealment, firing positions, elevated platforms, choke points, and routes invisible on German maps. The commandos learned to move through them silently, using gaps in walls as improvised lanes, stair remnants as vantage points, and collapsed roofs as cover from patrols. A ruined building was more than debris, it was a terrain advantage waiting to be shaped. To develop this skill, British training areas began to replicate the environments they'd face across occupied Europe. In Scotland, the rugged coastline became a classroom. In Wales, derelict structures were deliberately collapsed to teach soldiers how to read broken architecture. In southern England, instructors used bomb-damaged villages as live training grounds, turning destruction into lessons. Within these spaces, the commandos practiced rapid entries, coordinated firing arcs, and silent movement. They learned the distinctive sounds produced by shifting rubble and how to distribute weight to avoid alerting a nearby patrol. Every broken brick, every leaning beam, and every shattered doorway had tactical value. They were taught to find it instantly. Meanwhile, German garrisons across Europe fortified towns, ports, and industrial areas. Their defenses relied heavily on predictable lines of approach, roads, bridges, and visible structures. But ruins, by their nature, were unpredictable. They changed shape after bombardment, opened new paths, and concealed threats the Germans often underestimated. British units recognized this weakness early. A ruined coastline provided angles unseen from watchtowers. A half-collapsed house concealed a squad. A bomb-blasted warehouse offered enough elevation for a Bren gunner to dominate an entire street. Ruins were difficult for German troops to survey, making them ideal for sudden strikes. By 1941, commando units had refined these methods through raids across the Channel. Small operations along the French coast taught them how to slip into devastated harbors, ambush isolated posts, and withdraw before German reinforcements arrived. These early experiences proved that the commandos' strength lay not only in their courage but in their ability to turn damaged terrain into a calculated advantage. Their commanders encouraged creativity. A patrol could break through a wall instead of using the door. A sniper could fire through a crack rather than reveal his position at a window. A demolition team could use fallen beams to mask the sound of charges being set. The commandos were trained to think in 3 dimensions, exploiting every layer of debris. This tactical evolution laid the foundation for later, larger raids. Britain was preparing to strike more boldly, and every success inside ruins built confidence for operations aimed deeper into occupied territory. Each lesson learned created momentum. The stage was set for the commandos to transform their use of ruins from a survival skill into a signature tactic. Their growing mastery inside shattered environments would soon shape the next phase of their development, pushing them into larger operations where their adaptability would be tested under fire. This progression leads directly into the detailed operational developments that unfolded over the following years, as Britain expanded its commando strategy across multiple fronts. As Britain strengthened its commando forces, operations across Europe revealed how crucial ruined environments would become to their identity. Each raid exposed new weaknesses in German defensive patterns, especially in places where structures lay broken from earlier fighting or Allied air attacks. The commandos learned to read these scenes faster than their opponents. Norway became one of the earliest proving grounds. Its coastal towns, abandoned factories, and half-destroyed warehouses provided the commandos with natural training spaces under real enemy pressure. During raids along the Norwegian coast in 1941, British teams moved through shattered fishing huts and damaged quayside buildings with increasing confidence. They realized that ruins created natural blind spots for German sentries who relied on clear lines of sight and predictable patrol routes. One of the most significant lessons came from the Vaxo raid. British forces used broken door frames, fractured walls, and roofless interior spaces to outflank German defenders accustomed to fighting from intact positions. The Germans expected frontal assaults. Instead, the commandos moved through gaps created by shell impacts, carving silent paths that allowed them to appear in unexpected places. These experiences reinforced that British raiders held an advantage when fighting inside destruction. Elsewhere, the deep raid of 1942, although costly, offered crucial insights. British planners recognized how German firepower dominated open ground but struggled to adjust quickly once fighting moved into collapsed beachfront buildings and destroyed structures along the promenade. The commandos who advanced through debris-covered stairwells or fought from partial walls found that broken environments neutralized some fixed German weapons. Even a failed operation added valuable lessons about urban and semi-urban ruin combat. As the war expanded, the Mediterranean theater provided further opportunities. In Crete, Sicily, and across the Aegean Islands, raiding parties operated inside abandoned forts, bombed-out garrisons, and collapsed coastal watchposts. These places demanded precision. A misstep on loose stone could expose a patrol. A poorly chosen firing point could be traced by German machine gunners. The commandos refined their instincts, becoming specialists at turning damaged structures into fortified ambush positions. British training adapted quickly. New courses emphasized building entry drills and the study of structural weaknesses. Soldiers learned how to break through weakened walls silently, how to spot beams that would support weight, and how to identify areas where floors might collapse under pressure. They practiced climbing through shattered upper levels and using rubble piles as concealed shooting platforms. Explosives training also evolved. Demolition teams were taught to use the debris itself to mask charges or distort sound signatures. This allowed commandos to destroy German equipment, fuel stores, or communications networks from positions hidden inside ruins, often only meters away from enemy sentries who remained unaware until after the blast. Coordination with the Special Operations Executive, SOE, added another layer of sophistication. SOE agents operating in occupied cities provided intelligence on which buildings were damaged, which routes were blocked by rubble, and which abandoned structures the Germans avoided. This information transformed raids from hazardous gambles into calculated maneuvers. A single report on a collapsed warehouse could determine the entire shape of a mission. The Royal Navy also played a crucial role. Many commando raids depended on naval support to insert and extract troops. Naval officers studied charts showing bombed harbors and broken piers, identifying the safest points where small craft could land without alerting nearby German patrols. These precise naval approaches often determined whether the commandos could reach the ruined structures they intended to use as ambush grounds. By late 1942 and into 1943, Britain had not only committed to commando warfare but had developed a doctrine around it. Intelligence teams mapped ruined towns with the same care used for intact fortifications. Every broken corner, collapsed storehouse, or burnt-out farmhouse represented potential cover, concealment, or firing advantage. The commandos' reputation grew quickly. German reports began to highlight British raiders' ability to appear suddenly inside damaged buildings that were assumed empty. Some garrisons strengthened patrols around ruins, others avoided them entirely, recognizing that these unpredictable environments favored the attackers rather than the defenders. The British had turned ruins into a psychological weapon. This period marked a turning point. Britain now possessed not only elite soldiers but a specialized method of fighting that leveraged destruction itself. The combination of intelligence, training, operational experience, and creativity formed a consistent pattern in commando doctrine. Their mastery of broken terrain would shape the way they approached future raids, influencing the tactics they used, the tools they carried, and the strategies their commanders designed. This natural evolution leads directly into the deeper angles that defined how British commandos transformed ruins into deadly ambush grounds. The foundation of every successful commando raid was stealth. British units trained to move quietly through fractured buildings, broken stairwells, and shattered corridors. Every step was calculated, every sound measured. Soldiers learned to anticipate how debris would respond to weight, predicting the snap of a splintered beam or the shift of loose stones. Stealth was not merely silence. It was timing. The commandos synchronized their movements with distant noises, using artillery echoes, naval engines, or even German patrol footsteps to mask their presence. Inside ruins, this became crucial. A single misstep could alert the enemy to a squad hidden behind a collapsed wall. The British emphasis on stealth extended to visual concealment. Uniforms were darkened, equipment minimized, and positions chosen to blend with the jagged edges of destroyed interiors. Commanders taught recruits to exploit shadows and debris patterns, moving from one broken feature to another without creating new silhouettes. Stealth also reinforced morale. The knowledge that a team could remain undetected until the precise moment of attack gave soldiers confidence. They could control the encounter, choosing the timing, location, and intensity of engagement. It turned ruins into silent partners, providing cover, surprise, and a psychological edge. Commandos transformed ruins into vantage points. Broken staircases, crumbled walls, and roofless buildings offered firing positions that dominated streets, alleys, and approaches. Every structural weakness became a potential stronghold, carefully mapped and memoized before the raid. Officers conducted reconnaissance to determine lines of sight and sectors of fire. A single window could cover multiple streets. A collapsed roof allowed a machine gunner to target an entire courtyard unseen. Even minor rubble piles became protective barriers for riflemen. British soldiers adapted quickly. When walls fell during bombardment, they were assessed as potential firing platforms rather than obstacles. Teams learned to secure each position for maximum efficiency, covering each other while controlling movement through the ruined structure. Positioning was more than tactical. It conveyed a sense of control. Commandos inside ruins dictated the battlefield, forcing German forces to react to them. This inversion of conventional power dynamics was central to the success of British ambushes, turning destruction into dominance. Deception played a critical role in raids. British commandos manipulated the ruins to create false impressions for German defenders. They left intentional gaps to suggest emptiness, scattered debris to channel patrols along predictable paths, and used noise in one area to distract from movements elsewhere. Inside crumbled buildings, misdirection became an art form. A single figure moving in shadow could imply a larger presence. Explosives were sometimes set in decoy positions, drawing enemy fire away from the true point of assault. The combination of stealth, positioning, and deception amplified effectiveness. Commandos were rarely outnumbered in direct engagements because they avoided them altogether, striking at the enemy when and where the Germans least expected. Deception ensured that ruins remained unpredictable. For German soldiers, every corner held uncertainty. For the British, every corner offered opportunity. By turning destruction into a stage for surprise, the Commandos redefined the battlefield itself. Commandos adapted firepower to ruined environments. Sten guns, Bren guns, and small-caliber rifles were preferred for their maneuverability inside broken structures. Heavy weapons were often impossible to deploy in collapsed interiors, so British units relied on rapid, precise bursts from lighter arms. Every shot counted. Teams trained to fire from improvised positions behind rubble, through cracks in walls, or from partially collapsed windows. These angles multiplied the effective coverage of a single operator. British soldiers were taught to anticipate enemy movement, targeting choke points or doorways before patrols entered them. Explosives enhanced firepower without exposing men. Charges set within debris could destroy barricades, flush enemy soldiers from positions, or create lethal obstacles. Commandos integrated these devices seamlessly, using them as both offensive tools and defensive reinforcements. Firepower in ruins emphasized precision over volume. A single well-placed burst could neutralize an entire patrol, turning a small British squad into a force capable of controlling a significant area of a destroyed village or town. Leadership within the Commandos was decisive. Officers and non-commissioned leaders guided their squads through chaotic structures, making split-second decisions under extreme pressure. Knowledge of the terrain, every broken floor, fallen beam, and shattered wall, was essential for maintaining cohesion. British commanders emphasized initiative. Men were trained to act independently when isolated, but always within the framework of the mission. This balance allowed units to exploit opportunities inside ruins while minimizing risk. Decisions about positioning, timing, and assault routes often rested on leadership judgment. A misread corner or hesitation could alert the enemy. Strong, confident leadership ensured that each member of the team understood their role, could anticipate threats, and could act decisively in confined, unpredictable environments. German forces faced unprecedented challenges when defending against commandos in ruined terrain. Their training emphasized predictable approaches, fortified positions, and clear lines of sight. Ruins disrupted all of these assumptions. From the enemy perspective, every collapsed wall could conceal British soldiers. Patrols had to move cautiously, often slowing progress to avoid ambush. Commandos manipulated this uncertainty, using the Germans' expectation of normal terrain against them. Reports captured by British intelligence highlighted frustration among German officers. Many garrisons underestimated the British ability to coordinate attacks from unconventional positions. Ruins magnified this problem, offering multiple entry points, concealed firing lanes, and opportunities for surprise assaults that conventional doctrine could not anticipate. Understanding the enemy view allowed British units to refine their tactics further. By predicting how Germans would react to destruction, commandos could orchestrate ambushes that maximized effect while minimizing exposure, turning ruins into instruments of psychological as well as physical warfare. November 27, 1941. Vaksø, Norway. British commandos prepared to strike at a key German coastal garrison. Intelligence had identified a ruined warehouse complex near the harbor as the most vulnerable point. 4 days, reconnaissance teams had mapped every broken wall, fallen beam, and hidden corridor. Every exit, every potential choke point, was logged and rehearsed. The raid began just after midnight. Small boats slipped through dark waters under the cover of naval artillery, depositing squads along the jagged shoreline. Men disembarked silently, rifles and Sten guns ready, moving over the uneven terrain with precise coordination. Inside the warehouse ruins, teams split into fire sectors. Some men positioned on collapsed staircases, others behind shattered walls, each covering multiple approaches. A Bren gunner took the second-floor platform, overlooking the courtyard where German patrols had been reported. The first German sentries appeared, moving along the anticipated path. Commandos held fire, timing their attack to the heartbeat of the patrol. Then, with a single-hand signal, the operation erupted. Bursts of Sten fire tore through the air. Sentries fell before they could react. British teams flowed through gaps in walls, clearing rooms, and securing corridors in rapid succession. Every squad moved in tandem. A demolition team set charges in structural weak points, cutting off German reinforcements. Officers directed movements from vantage points, ensuring that every corner was secured and every approach covered. The commandos anticipated German reactions, redirecting fire to intercept any attempt to regroup. The ruins themselves amplified the assault. Collapsed beams became firing barriers. Shattered walls allowed overlapping arcs of coverage. Every broken stair, every partially collapsed floor, funneled the enemy into prepared kill zones. German defenders, trained for conventional engagements, were disoriented and fragmented. Within 20 minutes, the main garrison was neutralized. British units consolidated positions, preparing to withdraw once demolition and intelligence objectives were complete. Every squad member understood that success depended on timing, coordination, and the exploitation of the ruined terrain. This was the moment when British mastery of destruction became decisive. Ruins were no longer incidental, they were integral to victory. The outcome of the raid rested not on numbers but on the precision, discipline, and ingenuity of the commandos. The German garrison was not yet fully defeated. Small pockets of resistance remained, hiding in the remnants of bombed buildings along the harbor. British commandos anticipated these movements. Teams repositioned, moving through shattered corridors with calculated speed, turning every collapsed wall and debris pile into a vantage point for suppression fire. The commandos' coordination was flawless. Officers used hand signals to guide teams through broken streets, while men shifted between firing sectors without breaking the tempo of the assault. Sten guns and Bren fire covered approaches as demolition teams prepared charges to cut off escape routes. Every action was synchronized, leaving no opportunity for German units to regroup. In one narrow alley, a German patrol attempted to flank a British position. A commando, using a collapsed wooden barricade for cover, dispatched the squad with precise bursts. Elsewhere, teams funneled enemy soldiers into cleared rooms rigged with explosives, neutralizing resistance with minimal exposure. The ruined buildings amplified the effectiveness of every tactic. The final resistance concentrated around the central warehouse. German officers attempted to organize a counterattack, but British firepower and positioning prevented any advance. Commandos moved through the upper levels, covering staircases and corridors while clearing lower floors systematically. Explosions from previously planted charges disrupted German cohesion, isolating small groups and forcing surrender. Naval observers offshore reported the rapid and controlled progress of the raid. Small craft remained in position to extract teams and captured documents, ready to retrieve intelligence gathered from German records. The combination of precision, planning, and the tactical use of ruins ensured the raid's success. By dawn, all objectives had been achieved. German casualties were significant, several key officers captured, and vital intelligence recovered. British units consolidated positions briefly before beginning a coordinated withdrawal. The operation demonstrated how ruins could serve as both defensive and offensive assets, transforming the battlefield into a controllable environment for highly trained forces. This climax established the principle that destruction could be weaponized. British commandos had shown that discipline, foresight, and tactical innovation allowed them to dominate even against numerically superior enemy forces. The lessons from Varso would reverberate across future raids, shaping doctrine and morale. The Varso raid left the German garrison in disarray. Reports captured from the ruined warehouse confirmed significant enemy losses. At least 70 German soldiers were killed during the ambushes, with another 30 taken prisoner. British forces suffered minimal casualties, a testament to the precision and planning that had guided every movement through the shattered buildings. Beyond numbers, the raid had an immediate psychological impact. German officers struggled to reconcile the effectiveness of a small, mobile force operating within what they considered secure positions. The use of ruins as ambush sites forced them to reconsider defensive strategies across other occupied coastal towns. Commanders issued new orders to fortify previously ignored destroyed structures, but these adjustments often came too late to prevent further raids. British morale soared. Commandos returned with intelligence, including maps and documents, showing German patrol routes and communication lines. These materials were analyzed by planners in London, providing insights for future operations. Success in Varso validated the continued development of commando tactics, particularly the emphasis on using destroyed buildings as strategic assets. The operation also demonstrated the importance of coordination with naval support. Landing craft had inserted and extracted teams without detection, while offshore gunfire suppressed any potential reinforcements. The seamless integration of sea and land forces reinforced the British belief that raids could achieve significant results with minimal manpower if executed with precision. Commanders immediately assessed the lessons learned. Small unit leadership proved decisive, particularly in confined and unstable terrain. Teams that maintained discipline, communicated silently, and adapted to sudden structural collapses avoided casualties and maintained operational momentum. These principles were formalized in subsequent training manuals, ensuring that future commandos would operate under the same rigorous standards. Strategically, Varso sent a clear message. Britain could strike anywhere along the occupied coastline, using ingenuity and terrain manipulation to overcome numerical inferiority. The raid disrupted local German operations, delayed reinforcements to nearby garrisons, and forced commanders to divert attention to previously neglected locations. The success of British tactics inside ruins began to shape the broader approach to coastal defense across Norway and beyond. The aftermath also highlighted the growing expertise of British forces in integrating demolition, stealth, and ambush techniques. Each ruined building became a template for future operations, with soldiers learning to exploit every corner, every beam, and every wall fragment. The combination of intelligence, precision, and creativity transformed ruins from passive destruction into active weapons. The broader consequences of the Varso raid extended beyond immediate casualties. German commanders reassessed the vulnerability of coastal towns and ruined structures. Previously, destroyed buildings were considered neutral spaces, irrelevant to defense planning. After Varso, they became sites of anxiety. Patrols were increased, barricades erected, and ruined warehouses guarded more heavily. Yet even these adjustments could not entirely negate the commandos' ingenuity. British forces capitalized on this disruption. By forcing the Germans to divert attention to shattered buildings, the commandos created openings for subsequent raids. Intelligence gathered during Varso informed future operations across Norway, France, and the Mediterranean. Patterns of patrols, structural weaknesses, and enemy responses became part of a growing repository of tactical knowledge. Each raid built upon the last, and British planners refined strategies to maximize the use of destroyed terrain. The raid also influenced the morale of German garrisons. Reports intercepted by British intelligence indicated confusion, frustration, and a loss of confidence in previously secure positions. Soldiers who survived encounters in ruined towns reported the disorienting effects of unpredictable firing lanes and sudden ambushes. The psychological impact was as significant as the physical losses. On the British side, the success strengthened faith in small unit operations. Commandos proved that a handful of well-trained men could achieve objectives that conventional forces might struggle to accomplish. Ruins were no longer obstacles but instruments of control. Each building, each corridor, each collapsed floor became a calculated element in operational planning. The operation also reinforced inter-service cooperation. Coordination between the Royal Navy, intelligence units, and commando teams became a model for later raids. Naval officers observed enemy responses and adjusted landing strategies, while intelligence officers refined methods for identifying key targets. This synergy ensured that subsequent operations were executed with even greater precision and minimal exposure. Casualty reports from VAGSO were formally documented in British War Offices, with detailed analysis of enemy engagement patterns. These reports informed training manuals and future raid planning. Soldiers who experienced the raid shared lessons learned, emphasizing the importance of anticipation, positioning, and the tactical exploitation of destruction. Ultimately, VAGSO set a precedent. British commandos had demonstrated that they could control the battlefield within ruined terrain, turning what had once been seen as chaos into a strategic advantage. The lessons from this raid resonated through subsequent operations, shaping doctrine, reinforcing morale, and redefining the tactical potential of destruction. The VAGSO raid exemplifies a pivotal shift in warfare. Britain's commandos demonstrated that destruction could be weaponized, that ruins were not merely remnants of past battles but instruments of strategic advantage. Every shattered wall, every collapsed floor became a tool for control, precision, and surprise. This transformation required more than courage. It demanded discipline, planning, and acute observation. British soldiers moved through chaos with intent, turning uncertainty into opportunity. Their ability to read ruined environments, anticipate enemy reactions, and synchronize movements across fragmented structures redefined what a small, elite force could achieve. The psychological dimension was equally profound. German garrisons, trained for conventional engagements, found themselves disoriented and vulnerable. The unpredictability of ambushes inside destroyed buildings eroded confidence and forced defensive adaptations that were often too late. Commandos exploited this, proving that skill and ingenuity could outweigh numerical superiority. VAGSO and similar operations also left a lasting mark on military doctrine. Future raids across occupied Europe drew upon these lessons, refining tactics, integrating intelligence, and enhancing coordination between land, sea, and special forces. British success in ruined environments influenced approaches to urban warfare, demolition operations, and small unit strategy in years to come. Yet the human dimension remained central. Men operated under extreme stress, relying on trust, leadership, and shared expertise. The ruins were more than tactical advantages. They were spaces where human ingenuity and resolve were tested. Victory depended on both the terrain and the minds navigating it. In the end, the raid at VAGSO stands as a testament to the adaptability of British forces during the Second World War. It highlights how skill, preparation, and the clever use of the environment can turn devastation into a decisive advantage. Ruins became symbols not of defeat, but of opportunity, showing that in war, even broken ground can be a foundation for triumph. The legacy of these operations extends beyond history books. It informs modern tactics, inspires the study of small unit operations, and demonstrates the enduring principle that mastery of the battlefield often begins with understanding how to use the world around you, even in its most fragmented form.